Elias Rook owned the biggest ranch in Cedar Basin, 7 miles of creek bottom, 900 head of cattle, and a name that made men lower their voices before they lied. Every widow between Larkspur Crossing and the county seat had tried him once. Some came with pies. Some came with sympathy. Some came with daughters old enough to be useful and sons young enough to need a father. Elias turned all of them away. Not with cruelty. Cruel men were easier to understand. Elias was fair. He paid his hands before he bought his own supplies. He never grazed across a boundary line he had not earned. He had once ridden through a hailstorm to drag a neighbor's milk cows out of a flooded draw, then acted annoyed when the neighbor thanked him. But there was a locked part of him that no one in Cedar Basin could get a hand around. Then, one Tuesday before sunrise, he walked into the tack room and froze with one hand still on the latch. His father's bridle was hanging on the center peg. Not the cracked, stiff, half-rotted bridle Elias had refused to move for 5 winters. Not the ruined headstall with the split crown piece and the dull silver conchos gone black with dust. This one was dark with fresh oil. The silver had been cleaned. The split leather had been stitched so neatly it looked less repaired than forgiven. And Elias Rook had no idea who had dared to touch it. That was the first time in 5 years anyone in Cedar Basin saw fear on his face. The bridle had belonged to Amos Rook. Amos was the kind of man who filled a room before his boots crossed the threshold. He laughed too loud, cursed too openly, bought the first round in town, and had a gift for making hard work feel like a contest he had already decided to enjoy. He had built Thornwire Ranch from a homestead cabin, 3 longhorn cows, and a temper that never fully cooled. By the time Elias was a boy, the Rook brand was burned into more cattle than any other mark in the basin. Amos owned one fine thing, a working headstall and rein set made by a Mexican leatherman in San Miguel. Dark chap leather, hand-cut cheek pieces, silver conchos, and a small star tooled beneath the brow band where only a man saddling up would ever notice it. He used it for 17 years. Then a winter cough settled into his lungs and stayed. When Amos died, Elias was 29. The ranch became his. The debts were clean, the cattle were healthy, the hands stayed, and the bridle went onto a center peg in the tack room. It stayed there through 5 springs, 5 branding seasons, 5 winters cold enough to split water buckets at the seam. Elias would not oil it, would not replace it, would not take it down. When his foreman, Boone Sutter, mentioned once that good leather died faster if a man left it dry, Elias looked at him so hard Boone never mentioned it again. So the bridle hung there, cracking in plain sight, a thing everyone saw, a thing no one touched. By the year Mara Vale came to Cedar Basin, Elias Rook's solitude had become part of the local weather. People did not wonder whether he would marry. They wondered which woman would waste her pride trying next. Mara arrived in Larkspur Crossing on the noon freight wagon with 1 trunk, 1 canvas tool roll, and a black leather satchel that looked as if every road in the territory had tried to tear it open and failed. She was not dressed to draw attention. A brown wool skirt, a gray shirt-waist, a man's coat cut down to fit her shoulders. Dark hair pinned low, not fashionably, just securely. What people noticed first was not beauty, it was the way she looked at things. She looked at doors and hinges, at harness straps hanging from wagons, at the wear patterns on boots, at the dry cracks in a saddle seat tied behind a farmer's buckboard. She looked as if the world was always explaining itself, and she had learned not to interrupt. Mara rented the small back room above Orla Pike's eating house and asked for a table by the downstairs window. "What for?" Orla asked. "Leather work," Mara said. "Harness?" "Harness, saddles, boots, reins, cases, straps. If it is leather and still wants to live, I can usually help it." By the end of the first week, half the basin knew she was good. By the end of the second, the saddler in Cutter's Ford had lost business he had been taking for granted for 15 years. Mara charged fairly, worked quickly, spoke little, and never asked the kind of questions people feared answering. That made some folks trust her. It made others suspicious. A private woman was a problem in a small place. A skilled private woman was worse. Elias did not meet her for nearly a month. He heard about her the way he heard about most things in the basin, not because anyone reported it, but because work spoke. A roan mare stopped fighting her bit after Mara reset a twisted cheek strap. A mule team stopped bleeding at the shoulder after she rebuilt the breast collar. Boone's old spur leathers, which Elias had privately considered hopeless, came back soft, dark, and stronger than before. Elias noticed. He noticed everything that affected animals, tools, fences, water, wages, or weather. People, he noticed less. Then in late May, a young hand named Jory Pike made the mistake that changed the basin. Jory was Orla's nephew, 17, eager, loyal, and dangerously convinced that every problem became smaller if he moved fast enough. Boone had sent him into town with a bundle of broken tack. 3 cinches, 2 reins, a halter, and a saddlebag strap chewed by a bored gelding. Somehow, in the dust and confusion of the tack room, Jory took down the wrong bundle. Amos Rope's bridle went to town wrapped in burlap. Mara unwrapped it on her work table just as the afternoon light slid through the window. She knew at once it did not belong with the other repairs. The leather was too fine, the silver too old, the wear too personal. Some things are used by many hands. Some things are shaped by one. This bridle had belonged to a man whose left hand pulled harder than his right, who rode in cold weather, who cleaned the brow band but neglected the underside of the reins, who had once repaired the throat latch with a knot no trained craftsman would admit was clever. Mara turned it over and found the initials beneath the crown, A.R. She looked out the window toward the road that led to Thornwire Ranch. Then she looked at the split leather. And she made the wrong practical decision. She could have sent it back untouched. She should have sent it back untouched. Instead, she repaired only what would die if it waited another week. She did not make it new. She did not polish out the history. She cleaned the silver enough to stop the black tarnish from eating the edges. She softened the dry leather slowly. She stitched the split crown piece with thread darkened to match the old work. She left the scars. At dusk, Jory came to collect the bundle. Mara handed him the bridle separately. "Do not toss this into the rest," she said. Jory swallowed. Did I bring that in? You did. Mr. Rook is going to kill me. No, Mara said, studying the boy's face. He is going to look like he wants to. That is different. Jory carried the bundle home in a silence that lasted 6 full miles. Before dawn the next morning, he hung the bridle back on its center peg and said nothing. That is how Elias found it. By breakfast, Jory had confessed. By noon, Elias was in town. He did not come storming through Orla Pike's front room. He did not raise his voice. He stood inside the doorway with his hat in one hand and looked at Mara's work table like it had insulted him. "You fixed a bridle from my tack room," he said. Mara set down the awl in her hand. "I repaired damage that had gone past waiting." "You were not asked." "No." The word sat between them. Orla, who had been pretending not to listen from the kitchen doorway, stopped pretending and disappeared. Elias stepped closer to the table. "Do you know whose it was?" "I guessed." "Then you should have sent it back." "I should have," Mara said. "I did not." That was the first answer he had not expected. Most people defended themselves when they were wrong. Mara did not. It took some of the anger out from under him, and he disliked her for that for at least 3 seconds. "Why?" he asked. She looked at him directly. "Because leather has a point where neglect becomes a second kind of damage. I could see it was close. I thought whoever owned it might rather be angry at a repaired bridle than keep a ruined one." Elias stared at her. No one in Cedar Basin spoke to him that way. Not brave, not rude, just exact. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing." "I pay my debts." "You did not hire me." "And you did the work." Mara glanced at the road beyond the window, then back at him. $2 for the oil and thread. No charge for the mistake. He paid her 3 and left before she could return 1. That should have been the end of it. In a basin with kinder instincts, maybe it would have been. But Cedar Basin did not leave a story alone when it could sharpen it first. By evening, the first version had Mara stealing into Thornwire Ranch to reach Elias through his dead father. By the next day, she had supposedly studied him from a distance, learned the story of Amos Rook's bridle, and chosen the one object guaranteed to split him open. By Sunday, she was a schemer. By Monday, she was a desperate woman with a road-worn satchel and no family, hunting the richest rancher in the basin with needle, oil, and calculation. The widow who spread that version hardest was Celia Brand. Celia owned 40 acres, a good milk herd, and a sense of injury so polished it looked almost like dignity. She had brought Elias a peach tart the year before and received a polite note of thanks delivered by Boone instead of the man himself. She had never forgiven him for being unreachable. She forgave Mara even less for reaching him accidentally. Mara heard the talk in pieces, a conversation that stopped when she entered the dry goods store, a laugh that landed too late, a boy repeating the word trap because he had heard his mother say it. She did not answer any of it. She kept working. That was one reason Elias came back, not because he liked gossip, he despised it, but because Mara did not behave like a woman trying to defend a performance. She behaved like a person with work waiting. He came on a Thursday with a cracked flank cinch in one hand and Amos Rook's bridle in the other. Mara looked at the bridle, then at him. "I thought I repaired that." "You repaired the damage that could not wait," Elias said. "You left the rest." "Because the rest was not mine to decide." He set it on the table. "I'm deciding it now." She did not touch it right away. That restraint settled something in him before either of them understood why. "This will take time," she said. "How much?" "A week for the leather. Longer for the reins if you want them safe to use." "I did not say I wanted to use it." "No," she said, "but you brought it here in your own hands. That means more than if you sent a boy." He almost smiled. Almost. Mara worked on the bridle over the next 10 days. At first, Elias came only to pay for ranch repairs, or so he told himself. Then he stayed. He sat near the window in Orla Pike's front room while Mara worked the oil into old leather by hand. It was not fast work. Old leather resisted kindness. If she pulled too soon, it cracked. If she soaked it too heavily, it darkened wrong and lost its shape. If she tried to erase every scar, she destroyed the truth of the thing. "You fix everything this slowly?" Elias asked one afternoon. "Only things that were hurt slowly." The line landed harder than she meant it to. He looked away first. Outside, wagon wheels ground through the dry street. Somewhere behind the eating house, Orla was scolding a delivery boy for stacking flour sacks against a damp wall. "The man who made it was from San Miguel," Mara said. Elias looked back. "How do you know?" "The edge finish, the star beneath the brow band, the way the cheek pieces are doubled. There were a few craftsmen along that route who worked like this." "You have been to San Miguel?" "I have been through." "Where else?" She threaded a needle and did not answer for a breath too long. "Enough places to know that most towns think they invented suspicion." He did smile then, small, unpracticed, gone almost immediately, but real. People saw him leaving Orla's more often after that. They saw him stand in the doorway. They saw him take his hat off. They saw Mara speak to him without lowering her eyes. And because people often prefer a story they can control over a truth that requires humility, the Basin decided it already understood what was happening. Celia Brand called it strategy. Mara called it Thursday. The summer hardened. Cedar Basin sat between red ridges and a line of cottonwoods that marked the creek. In wet years, the basin looked blessed. In dry years, it looked like a dare. By July, the smaller runs were lower than they should have been. Not gone, not alarming enough for panic. But the east branch ran thin over stones that should have been covered, and the north ditch stuttered at the headgate before noon. Elias rode the water lines every week. He told no one he was worried. Men like Elias considered worry useful only if it became action. Mara heard about the water before Elias told her. That was because leather work brought the basin to her table, one strap at a time. A homesteader named Leff Crowder brought a harness pad with a torn binding and mentioned that he had sold a ditch easement to a company out of Harlan. A sheep widow named Anise Kerr said a smooth man in a blue coat had offered her more money than her upper pasture was worth if she would sign access rights along the shallow draw behind her house. A farmer from the North Bench complained that his old spring line had been resurveyed, though he could not explain by whom. Mara listened. She had a gift for listening in a way that did not look like appetite. She asked no questions at first. She simply collected the pieces. The company name appeared 3 times before she wrote it down. Bastion, Ditch, and Land. The man behind it was Victor Hale. Elias knew the name when she finally said it. They were in Orla's front room after supper. The eating house had gone quiet. Mara was replacing a buckle on Boone's saddlebag. Elias sat by the cold stove with his hat resting on one knee. "Bastion is buying easements," she said. "How do you know?" "People talk while I stitch." "And you remember all of it?" "Not all, only the parts that repeat." She told him what she had heard. Leff Crowder, Annis Kerr, the North Bench survey, the offers, the word improvement, the promise that a private ditch system would make water fairer, steadier, modern. Elias did not move while she spoke. Stillness on him was not absence. It was the moment before a rope went tight. "Hale came to see me in April," he said. Mara set down the buckle. "What did he want?" "Nothing then. Introduced himself. Said the basin was poorly managed. Said private capital could solve what old habits had made inefficient." "Did he mention your creek rights?" "No." "Then he was measuring you." Elias looked at her. "That is a strong conclusion." "It is a practical one." He leaned forward. "What do you think he is doing?" Mara wiped her fingers on a cloth. "I think he is buying the little gates before he asks for the main door." The next day they rode to Annis Kerr's place. Anise was 50, sharp, compact, and so uninterested in flattery that she had once told the county preacher his sermon was long enough to count as weather. She received Elias and Mara in a kitchen that smelled of boiled coffee and sheep wool. Victor Hale had offered her $200 for a maintenance easement across her upper draw. "200, Anise said, "for a ditch a jackrabbit could jump." "Did he leave papers?" Mara asked. Anise gave her a folded contract from a flour tin. Mara read the first page, then the second. Then she turned back to the first and found the words that had been hidden in plain sight. "Here," she said. Elias bent over the table. The clause was titled Routine Maintenance and Operational Correction. Beneath it, in language dry enough to look harmless, Bastion, Ditch, and Land reserve the right to deepen, redirect, consolidate, or otherwise alter water movement through the easement as required for efficient distribution. Anise squinted. "That does not sound like maintenance." "It is not," Mara said. "What is it?" Elias answered. "Control." The room changed after that. Not visibly. No one shouted. No one overturned a chair. But Anise's hand settled flat on the contract as if she needed to keep it from moving. Mara looked at the ink. She had seen language like that before. Different territory, different man. Same clean knife wrapped in legal cloth. Elias noticed her face. He did not ask. Not yet. Victor Hale came to Thornwire Ranch 4 days later. He arrived in a polished buggy with a matched team, a blue coat, and a clerk beside him who did not speak unless spoken to. Hale was handsome in the way certain men remain handsome by force of habit. Gray at the temples, clear eyes, careful hands, the kind of voice that made theft sound like administration. He spoke to Elias on the porch. He did not ask to come inside. That told Elias something. Hale laid out a map of Cedar Basin, marked with blue lines, red gates, and black dots. The red gates were proposed control points. The black dots were properties already in agreement. The blue lines were every small watercourse that fed the main creek before it crossed Thornwire land. Our aim is stability, Hale said. The basin has depended too long on old custom and individual judgment. A consolidated ditch network would protect everyone when drought comes. Who runs it? Elias asked. Bastion would manage operations under a trusteeship. Who chooses the trustees? That will be determined once enough stakeholders have entered the agreement. Meaning you. Hale's smile did not change. Meaning the process will mature as participation grows. There are men who lie by denying truth. Victor Hale lied by building rooms around it. Elias looked at the map. 3 red gates sat above Thornwire's east branch. 1 sat near Leff Crowder's old ditch. 1 sat above Annis Kerr's draw. 1 sat exactly where the North Bench spring line met the old survey boundary. Mara had been right. Hale was buying the little gates, and now he had come for the main door. "What are you offering?" Elias asked. Hale named a number large enough to make Boone curse later when he heard it. Elias did not blink. "I will consider it." "Of course," Hale said. "There is no urgency." That was when Elias knew there was. He rode to Mara before sunset. She listened to his account without interruption. When he repeated Hale's words, she said, "There is no urgency" means he is missing something he needs. My creek. Or your name. Elias looked at her. If Thornwire signs, others follow. Yes. And if I refuse? He will make refusing look selfish. That, too, proved true. Hale did not attack Elias first. He attacked Mara. Not publicly, not clumsily. He spoke softly to merchants, then to farmers' wives, then to the men who had already signed and needed to believe they had not been fooled. He wondered aloud whether a newcomer understood basin customs, whether a woman who had made herself close to Elias Rook might be guiding his judgment, whether someone with no land of her own had any reason to care what a water system cost people who did. He never called Mara a schemer. He did not need to. Cedar Basin already had that word ready. By the end of the week, Mara could not cross the street without feeling it. The old story had been warmed and served again. Only now the accusation had higher stakes. First, she had supposedly hunted a rancher. Now she was using him to fight a water project that might help the valley. Mara worked through it until the anger in her hands began to show in the stitch length. Then she put down the awl. Elias found her in the workroom behind Orla's, standing over a half-repaired harness with both palms braced on the table. He had seen cattle in storms with that exact stillness. "What did he take from you?" he asked. She did not look up. For a long moment, only the wall clock spoke. Then Mara said, "A farm." Elias waited. She had come to Cedar Basin with a trunk, a tool roll, and no history anyone could hold. He had accepted that because he understood locked rooms. But this door opened from the inside. "My husband died 3 years ago," she said. "Fever. We had 80 acres east of Bent River. Bad soil, but enough water to make it honest." She touched the edge of the table, not for balance, but because the memory had weight. There was a neighbor. He helped with the estate filings. Said I needed a friend who understood documents. He was right about one thing. I did need that. "What happened?" Elias asked. "The spring easement on the south field was rewritten between the draft I approved and the filing I signed. Not openly, not enough for a grieving woman to notice at a glance." Her voice stayed level. That made it worse. "By the time I understood, the challenge window had closed. Without that water, the farm was worth less than the debt against it. I sold what remained and came west." Elias did not say he was sorry. She was grateful for that. Sorry was sometimes just a way for another person to be done feeling uncomfortable. Instead, he said, "That is why you saw the claws. That is why I looked." He stood with his hat in both hands. "I would have wanted to know. You did not need my history to trust the facts." "No," he said, "but I would have wanted to know anyway." That was the moment Mara trusted him with more than the work. 2 days later, they rode to the county seat. The clerk there, a tight young man named Pell, tried to make public records sound like private treasure. Requests must be filed, searches must be scheduled, copies required approval. The reading room was not available without order. Mara let him finish. Then she said, "We are not requesting copies. We are inspecting filed land instruments under territorial public access law. We need easements, ditch rights, and water transfers filed by Bastion Ditch and Land in the last 14 months. Pell's mouth shut. Not because he liked her answer, because it was the first answer that met him where he lived. They spent 4 hours in a room that smelled of dust, ink, and old authority. Mara read. Elias sorted. Boone, who had insisted on coming, stood by the door and looked unpleasant enough to keep interruptions away. They found 13 Bastion filings. 9 contained the hidden maintenance clause. 4 early contracts contained bolder language, including a right to correct natural inefficiency in feeder courses. That phrase made Mara go still. "What?" Elias asked. She pulled an older survey from the county shelf and laid it beside Bastion's filed map. The difference was not large, 46 feet at most. But water law sometimes lived inside distances a wagon could cross in 3 seconds. On the old survey, the headgate above the North Bench Spring sat on Leff Crowder's remaining property. On Bastion's map, it sat just beyond his line, on land purchased from another man. The headgate was never theirs to buy, Mara said. Elias looked at the two maps until the meaning settled. If the old survey governs, then the first control point in their north ditch system is built on a false boundary. Boone exhaled once, low. That sounds like a crack. Mara folded her hands to keep from shaking. It is more than a crack. They took the papers to Gideon Ash, an old property lawyer in Cutter's Ford, who had the look of a man preserved by tobacco, argument, and dislike of fools. Ash read the documents twice. Then he pushed his spectacles up his nose. "The survey question is strong," he said. "If the earlier territorial plat is controlling, Bastion cannot claim that headgate. The maintenance clause is also overreaching unless the company holds a territorial operating charter." "Do they?" Elias asked. "I will find out." "How long?" "Longer than you want, shorter than Hale deserves." Ash was right on both counts. The answer came 8 days later. Bastion Ditch and Land had no territorial operating charter. It was a private land company. It could buy land. It could hold easements. It could not build a compulsory distribution system while pretending private contracts gave it public powers. And the old survey was the controlling record. Mara read the letter at Orla's table by lamplight. Elias stood across from her. "This can stop him," she said. "Can," Elias said, "not will." No. They both understood the difference. Law could be right and still arrive late. So Elias did the thing Cedar Basin least expected from him. He asked for a meeting. Not at Thornwire. Not where his size and money would make the room feel bought. At the schoolhouse, because everybody had a right to stand there. 41 people came. Farmers, ranch hands, homesteaders, women who had signed nothing but understood water better than the men who claimed the paperwork. Men who had signed and now stood stiff with fear that admitting the truth would make fools of them. Celia Brand came too. She sat in the third row in a blue dress and looked straight ahead. Victor Hale did not come. His silent clerk did. That was enough to tell everyone Hale cared. Elias spoke first. He did not make a speech because he did not know how to turn himself into one. He told them what Bastion had filed, what the contract said, what the old survey showed, what Gideon Ash had confirmed. Then he stepped aside. Mara walked to the front with the maps. You could feel the room decide whether it wanted to hear her. She did not plead with it. She did not mention the gossip. She did not defend her motives. She laid the Bastion contract beside Anise Kerr's draft and pointed to the maintenance clause. "This says ditch upkeep," she said, "but the sentence below it claims the right to redirect the water feature itself. That is not upkeep. That is control hidden under a dull word." She placed the old survey beside the new one. "This is the North Bench headgate. Bastion's map moves the boundary far enough to make that gate look purchasable from the wrong owner. The older plat is still controlling. That means the sale did not transfer what Bastion claims it transferred." A murmur moved through the schoolhouse. Not outrage yet. Recognition. That was stronger. Lev Crowder stood. His voice cracked once before it steadied. I sold because they told me the spring line was not mine anymore. They said the new survey settled it. Mara looked at him. The new survey did not settle it. Left sat down like his knees had become old in the space of one sentence. Celia Brand rose next. A small sound went through the room. Elias looked at her. So did Mara. Celia's face was pale, but her voice held. I said things about Mrs. Vale that were not true. No one breathed. I said she had come here to work on Mr. Rook. I said she had found the one soft place in him and used it. She turned slightly toward Mara. I was angry because I wanted to believe character shows itself in the order we expect. It does not. I was wrong. Mara did not rescue her from the silence. Some apologies needed to stand without being made comfortable. Thank you, Mara said. It was enough. After that, the meeting became messy because real community always does. Men argued about whether challenging Bastion would risk money already spent. Women asked why no one had read the contracts aloud before signatures. Leif Crowder wanted to know whether he would be laughed at for being fooled. Anise Kerr told him half the room would have been fooled, and the other half was lying if they said otherwise. Boone spoke only once. Water is not a private inconvenience, he said from the back wall. When the high draws run dry, the low creek pays for it next. Then every fence in this basin becomes a line around thirst. No one had a clean answer to that. By afternoon, they had a rough agreement. Gideon Ash would file a collective challenge. Elias would advance the fee, with Tom Barrick and 2 other ranchers matching what they could. Contracts with the hidden clause would be reviewed. The North Bench headgate claim would be contested first because it gave the fastest legal stop. It was not victory, not yet. It was a room that had been looking at Mara for months, and finally looked at the papers. That was the beginning. Victor Hale came to Thornwire Ranch one last time. No polished buggy this time, no clerk. Just Hale on a dark horse in the late afternoon, wearing the same blue coat and less certainty inside it. I think we have allowed misunderstandings to harden, he said. Elias stood by the corral fence. No. Hale waited. Elias did not fill the space. Hale's mouth tightened. There is room to modify terms. There is room for you to withdraw. You are making an enemy over a technicality. The headgate is not a technicality. The basin needs modern water management. Maybe, Elias said, but it does not need a thief to teach it planning. For the first time, Hale's face showed the man beneath the smoothness. Not anger exactly, calculation with the cover pulled off. This came from her, he said. Elias stepped away from the fence. Careful. Hale looked at him and understood something men like him dislike understanding. There would be no clean way through this man. Not because Elias was loud, because he had decided. Hale mounted and rode out. By winter, Bastion's office in Harlan was closed. The legal process dragged on for 7 months, because law is often less like justice than a slow animal carrying it. The drought came in January, not the worst anyone had seen, bad enough. The upper draws froze shallow. The north ditch ran thin. The Kerr sheep had to be moved for 3 weeks. Leif Crowder took day work at Thornwire and pretended it was temporary until temporary became a mercy everyone agreed not to name. Elias used his lower pasture for neighbors' stock twice that winter. He did not announce it. They did not thank him loudly. That was how dignity survived in Cedar Basin. Quietly, with gates left unlatched at the right time. Mara kept working through the cold. Her hands cracked at the knuckles. The workroom stove smoked when the wind came wrong. More contracts appeared on her table than harness repairs for a while. People who would not have asked her opinion in June were asking her to read clauses in February. She never said, "I told you." That would have been satisfying. It would also have been small. In April, the territorial office ruled the North Bench headgate claim invalid. Bastion could not hold what the seller never owned. 3 easements were rescinded for misrepresentation. The rest were narrowed until they looked like what the farmers had been told they were signing in the first place. No consolidated ditch system, no private trusteeship, no red gates over the basin's throat. Cedar Basin did not become wiser all at once. Places do not heal that cleanly. But men started asking for older surveys before newer promises. Women brought documents to the schoolhouse and made their husbands listen while clauses were read aloud. Gideon Ash came twice that summer and taught a room full of ranchers how to be bored by paperwork before paperwork ruined them. And Elias Rook rode to the spring gathering wearing Amos Rook's bridle on his gray horse. Not hung in the tack room, not kept as a relic, used. The sun was low over the cottonwoods when he arrived. Mara saw the silver first. Not bright, not polished for show, just clean enough to catch the light. The repaired crownpiece held. The old star beneath the brow band was hidden where only Elias and the horse could know it. He dismounted near the schoolhouse yard. For a moment the basin noise seemed to move around them without touching them. Mara looked at the bridle. "You trusted it." "I trusted the work." She looked at him then. That was as close as Elias had ever come to saying several things at once. Celia Brand noticed and walked very deliberately in the opposite direction, which was a kindness by Cedar Basin standards. Elias stood with his reins in one hand. "I have been thinking," he said. "That usually means trouble. It has this time." Mara waited. He was not comfortable. That mattered. Comfortable proposals were for men who had rehearsed being admired. Elias was trying to tell the truth and finding truth less cooperative than cattle. "When my father died," he said, "I thought keeping his things untouched was loyalty. I thought if I left them where he left them, I had not lost any more than I had already lost." He looked at the bridle, then back at her. "But leather does not honor a man by rotting in his name." Mara said nothing. "The same is true of land," he continued, "and water, and people." His hand tightened once on the reins. "You came here with a tool roll and less welcome than you deserved. You saw damage the rest of us had learned to walk around. You repaired what needed repairing, even when it made people angry. I am not asking you because you saved the basin." His voice lowered. "I am asking because when you see something worth holding, you do the work to hold it. I would like to build a life beside that." The gathering noise thinned to a distant hum. Mara looked at him honestly. She did not see rescue. She did not see ease. She did not see a soft future tied in ribbon. She saw a hard man who had learned how to open without breaking, a ranch that would always need work, a basin that had misjudged her once and might again, a life with weather in it. She also saw the bridle, old leather, real scars, new stitches, strong enough to take a working day. "Yes," she said. Elias exhaled as if he had been holding a winter in his chest. Good. It was so entirely him that Mara laughed. Not loudly, not prettily, just enough that Elias smiled in front of half the basin and gave them a new story to carry home. They married in June at Orla Pike's eating house. Not because it was grand, because it was where Mara had first been allowed to set up a table and work. Orla cried into a dish towel and denied it when accused. Boone stood by the door like a guard posted against happiness. Leff Crowder shook Mara's hand with both of his and said he was glad she had read the small words. Anise Kerr brought a cake dense enough to count as construction. Celia did not attend. But a week later, she sent a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a pair of old gloves with the seams blown open and a note. "If you are willing, these need work." Mara repaired them. She charged fairly. Life after that did not become a clean ending. The creek still ran low some years. Neighbors still disappointed each other. Documents still came with traps if a person trusted the heading more than the sentence beneath it. Elias was still quiet. Mara was still private. Neither was improved into someone easier for other people to enjoy. They built a workroom in the East Outbuilding at Thornwire with a wide window, shelves for hides, a long bench, and a nail by the door where the black satchel hung. Amos Rook's bridle returned to the center peg when it was not in use. Not as a wound, not as a shrine, as tack. A thing cared for. A thing trusted. A thing allowed to keep serving the living without betraying the dead. That was what Cedar Basin almost missed. It thought Mara had come to take hold of a lonely rancher. What she had really done was notice what was drying out: the leather, the creek, the contracts, the truth, the man. And she understood something the basin had forgotten in its pride. Damage does not always announce itself by breaking. Sometimes it hangs quietly in a room for years. Sometimes it hides in a dull sentence on the second page. Sometimes it looks like a person everyone has already decided not to understand. But if someone has the patience to look closely and the courage to touch what everyone else is afraid to disturb, even the dry places can learn how to hold again.